You know, the best part about this show is really what happens before this show goes on the air. We start talking about what we're going to talk about, and we start making our points, and it's just between he and I. We don't even we're not even starting. We were talking about the draft and who the Browns should take number one overall. And,
And it's never as good when we come back and
no, when we get on the
redo it
air, it's not nearly as interesting because, I don't know. I guess we're just bullshitting along and just talking away. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, you know what? It's 8:10. We're late. We need to get started. So welcome everybody to the pre-draft edition of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich. I have my partner here, Sean Williams. And next week is it. Next week is finally draft week. And we will talk about, tonight at least, we'll talk a little bit more about where the Saints can go and how we think the top 10 will probably shake out today. But first, before we get started and all that, Sean has a big announcement regarding our draft show, our 2-hour draft special next Tuesday night. Sean, why don't you go ahead and break the big news?
When we started this, it was at both Alan and my one of the things that we wanted to do. We wanted to make it personable for you guys, our viewers. We never wanted to lose sight of the fact that we were just one of you guys, and we were here to represent you. We weren't like up here looking down on you guys. We're on the same level as y'all, but at the same time, there's an accumulated knowledge of years and years of following and studying and learning and paying way more attention than we probably should have to this game that comes along with this. And it from an integrity standpoint, we always want to be as close as possible to right, because we know that there's people out there that listen to us and trust us, and Lord help them, depend on us to know this team and their perception of this team and what they should do and so on and so forth is in some small way molded by what Alan or myself has to say. And that's not something that escapes us by any means. And I'm getting sidetracked here. One of the things that we strive to do is to bring you guys the very best possible thing that we can do. And one of my goals in the first 12 months of our broadcast, and one of these days I'm gonna actually pull out the paper where I wrote down these goals before we ever started. One of the goals was to have an active roster player as a guest in our first year. Well, that didn't happen. We had some amazing guests in the first year of our show. Kyle Turley, Joe Horn, Nick Underhill, Herbie Tiope, Andrew Juge. Just the list goes on and on and on. And we're gonna I'm so proud and so blessed to be able to announce to you guys that next week, when we do the Donnie Lambert Memorial pre-draft show, we are going to have our very first active roster player as our special guest interview during the first half of the show. And also, it's my pleasure to announce that it's going to have a bit of a local flavor to it. We are going to have, from Bonnabelle High School, right there in Kenner, Louisiana, we are going to be welcoming in Arthur Millette, cornerback for the New Orleans Saints, and something that's very close to my heart, number 37, which is everybody that knows me knows that's my number. And yes, I had it before Steve Gleason. But I'm really excited. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to this happening. It's been a long time that we've worked on it and that we've strived for this. There's been some near misses. There's been some really close calls, but next week, hopefully, we're going to get this done. And I'm really looking forward to having Arthur as being our guest on the show. And as well as Arthur, let me go ahead and enroll that buffet out. We're also, don't look at me like that. I haven't eaten.
That buffet, I got you. I got you.
We're also, as we did a year ago, in my wildest imagination, when I came up with this concept to do this pre-draft show a year ago, I didn't really realize that it would turn out to be our most viewed episode of the season when we did the live mock draft. And we're going to be welcoming in journalists from across the country. Jake Arthur, Bob Rose, Josh Schultz, Matt Ulrich, John Butler, David Harrison, Andrew Wiedemann, Rick Suarez and Toots from the St. Craft Radio. See, beer, that just jumps out at me. And making the pick at number 27 for the New Orleans Saints is going to be our buddy Tyler Raymond. We're going to be doing it once again, a live first-round mock draft. There will be no trades, so whatever the draft order is on next Tuesday night will be what we roll with. That's what we will observe. And it's really interesting to see how some of these guys that actually cover these teams and actually follow these teams, how they choose differently from the way that the teams actually choose. I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, a year ago, it was our most successful, most viewed episode of the entire year. And I never, for the life of me, I never saw that happening, but it did. And I can't say enough how excited I am to have Arthur on the show with us.
It should be fun. I mean, you're going to get an inside view from a player now as an undrafted free agent. We can talk to him about this. What it's like to sit and watch the draft and not hear your name call, but you start getting those phone calls in the 7th round, in the, immediately after the draft. Hey, we're interested in you. If you don't get drafted, we want to talk to you. We're going to, what is that process like? Because a long time ago, and it's hard to believe, as recently as 2000, 2001, I believe, it used to be 8 rounds to the draft. Prior to that was 12 rounds to the draft. And then going back in the day with Danny Abramowitz back in the 60s and of course in the 70s, there was 17 rounds to the draft. So a guy like a Pierre Thomas, an Arthur Millette, Lance Moore, just go down the list of undrafted free agents the Saints have brought in over the years. Those are guys that probably would have been an 8th round, a 9th round, a 10th round draft pick. And if you think those guys, just because you were picked that late in the draft, if you think those guys don't make a difference, look at Danny Abramowitz, a 17th round pick. You look at a Hokie Gajan, which I believe was a 10th rounder out of LSU. You look at a Jim Wilkes, who is the heart and soul of the Dome Patrol as far as that defensive line position, because he played the all-important first as a defensive end when Jumpy Gathers was there. Then he played nose tackle, 12th round pick. I mean, those guys contributed heavily. You know, these were starters. These were good players for the franchise. You know, so it's not – I don't want to denigrate these undrafted free agents that come in like a Ken Crawley and come in and become effective as players, but these are guys back in the day, in my opinion, that would have been those late-round draft picks. So in a sense, you know, these are guys that now that it's only 7 rounds and Mr. Irrelevant really isn't Mr. Irrelevant, because Mr. Irrelevant really has a good chance of making the team and being a useful player compared to back in the day. These are guys, you're seeing a lot of talent now slide completely out of the draft. I think Malcolm Butler was an undrafted free agent, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, Malcolm Butler, another undrafted free agent. These are guys that have a lot of talent. They just, for whatever reason, like a Sammy Knight, for whatever reason, don't fit all the check boxes. You know, Sammy Knight's knock was he wasn't fast enough, but he had football speed. So he was a much better player on the field than he was, you know, I guess as far as combine numbers and all the things that we all look at. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. I'm really looking forward to talking to him.
I'm kind of I'm not like some of what they call these draft nicks. I think that probably the thing that's hurt the NFL draft the most in the past decade is the combine.
Yeah,
I just, you know, I was a player. You were a player. There's not a whole lot of useful knowledge that's going to come from this guy that's supposed to be a dominant pass rusher, and he's running around cones out there. You want to know what's useful for this as far as this guy goes, put on his game tape, see what he does in a game situation. And even then, you're basically rolling the dice because of the discrepancy between the college game and then the level of play at the pro level as well. I don't think that there's a whole lot of as we've said before, the kid from Washington that ran the 4.2 40 last year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
Ross.
made a joke. Ross. I made a joke about him before. You know, did he die? He was going to be the player that changed the franchise. Well, guess what? He didn't.
He went to the Bengals. That's why.
Speed doesn't matter if you don't have the ball.
Well, here's my opinion with the combine, because the combine has a use, but the problem is it
generates revenue for those old white dudes.
No, the problem is the combine becomes the be-all and end-all for a lot of people who start looking at the draft and start predicting risers and fallers, because, you know, seeing guys run around in short and shells, as some of the old coaches used to call it, you know, seeing guys run around in shorts, you get information out of it. You have a chance to poke and prod these people like like cattle. You get true measurements. You get to really investigate the injury history and so forth of the player one-on-one. You get to have little interviews with the player and stuff like that. But people kind of fall in love with the pro days, and, you know, like my most famous example, of course, is Jamarcus Russell. You know, the picture of him at LSU Pro Day on his knees, throwing a ball 60-something yards in the air. Great. Wonderful. Did you hit the target? No. You know, I mean, beautiful pass. Went way over the head. You know, you can't handle pressure. Your feet are very slow. You might as well be kneeling down when you throw it. So it's like the thing with the Wonderlic that came out a while back. The thing, you know, when they talk about some of the players getting very low scores in the Wonderlic, it's just one tool that a organization will use in their composite picture they put together of a player. So the combine numbers, the one-to-look scores, the game film, interviews with the player, one-on-one breaking down film on the player, interviews with their coaches, interviews with their teachers, interviews with, the people who had to deal with them on a regular basis. All that goes into the mix. So, it's just one of many tools. To me, the thing that's kind of, I don't know if this is the right word or not, but the kind of thing that's ruined the draft to me is the 24/7 coverage of the draft.
Yeah.
Back in the early 80s when they first started televising the draft, when ESPN first started doing it, they really didn't have a whole lot on it. There wasn't this cottage industry of draft stuff. It was basically Pete Rozelle going up and saying, that a player got selected, and this is where Mel Kiper got his start. But, ESPN having Mel Kiper go, tell us about this guy. It was the first time a lot of people had heard of him. And since then, it's blown up into this 24/7 coverage. I've got 4 books here alone. Okay. I've got these magazines. I still buy magazines, but I got, Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Weekly. I've got Lindy's. Okay. I got this Athlon, sports. And you can see 526 players. I think Pro Football Weekly has 200. Lindy's has 325. And, of course, this is the first year I bought this one, Mike Detillier's book. And that's in addition to all the information you can get online. I know I'm old school. I bought books. People just look up stuff online all the time and screw the books. I like having the books around because I like going back to look at that stuff. I'm old school. But that stuff didn't exist. That stuff didn't exist 30 years ago. You couldn't find, my Lindy's, for example. This is volume 12. So for 12 years, I've been publishing this magazine. Pro Football Weekly, back in the day, Pro Football Weekly was like the magazine to have and the news article to have for sports and for football when Joel Bushbaum was alive. It's since way fallen apart since then. It's nowhere near as good as it used to be. But, again, that's an industry that has just sort of developed. What was your first draft you ever watched?
That would have been when I was in the 7th grade. I told everybody that I was going to skip school and watch, because if I'm not mistaken, that was the very first draft that ESPN covered as it happened. And I told everybody, hey, I'm going to skip school and watch it. And they all laughed at me, except my parents, who my mom just kind of pulled them glasses down and looked at me over the top of them and said, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And as it turned out, I got suspended from school the day before, so I got to see all 30 rounds. But that's another story for another time. I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember any of the players selected, actually. The most memorable draft by far that I really paid attention to was in 1983, though, the quarterback draft.
So you watched it?
I'm sorry?
You said you watched it earlier than I did. The first draft I watched was 1988. Well, after the 87 season, that was the first one that I sat there and made sure at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, I'm up watching the draft, and when the Saints were going to pick, because that was the year I'm like, okay, we got to the playoffs. We just need a We need a big receiver. We need a more powerful running back and all these other things. I started thinking all this stuff, and I wasn't prepared. I mean, I kind of knew a few players, but not a whole lot. And I'm just watching the draft. So that was the year we drafted Ironhead Hayward. But that was the first draft I sat and watched. Now, I'd seen highlights of course, the Marino draft in '83, the quarterback draft. But that's my larger point is it got to be bigger and bigger and bigger each year with more and more people. It went from a small ballroom in a hotel to, all of New York. Oh God, I can picture it. I just can't think of the name of it now. Music City Hall, New York. It filled that whole thing, and now it's gone on the road. Now I think it's in Chicago this year. 1 year,
it's in Dallas this year.
Dallas, okay, Dallas. Last year was in Chicago, but the point is, it travels now. It's not just in New York and a small group of people where the teams are all at tables with, helmet phones and the whole bit. All that's gone. It's a big production now. So, and I saw a lot of the famous, moments in draft history, like when the Jets blow picks and.
You'll have to be more specific.
Oh God, when the Jets would get things wrong, it's hilarious, and it's just not the same. It really isn't. But the infamous who the hell is Mel Kiper with Bill Tobin for the Colts because it didn't take Trent Dilfer. I remember that. I was watching that, and that was just an awesome clip as it happened. That stuff. Totally unscripted TV. It's just great stuff.
And I'll lump in there. Of course, it was somewhat later in the story, but the booing of Donovan McNabb being drafted by the Eagles, and he's arguably the most successful quarterback that they've had there up until the one that they have now, which that's still open to conjecture. Let me ask you this: as long as we're on the process of as long as we're on the subject of the draft, not too big of a stretch. Put yourself in the shoes of the GM of the Cleveland Browns. You have not only the first pick in the draft, but you also, again this year, you also have the number 4 pick in the draft. What exactly do you do with that?
I take Barkley and never look back. And here's why. You've got at least 4 quarterbacks who are top 10 picks, okay? Why take Sam Darnold or Josh Allen or Josh Rosen or even Baker Mayfield number 1 overall? Why? Is there really that big of a difference between these 4 quarterbacks? Okay? Second thing you got to keep in mind, let's look at the teams that are around the Cleveland Browns 2 picks. You got the Jets and the Giants. All right. If you don't take Barkley with that first overall pick, the Giants will. It's almost guaranteed the Giants will. Giants have 2 players they got targeted at that spot. They've got Chubb, the defensive end, and they've got Barkley. Okay. Either one of those guys. Now, I'm the Browns. Would I like to have Chubb? Sure. I'd love to have Chubb and pair him on the other side of Myles Garrett. Yeah. But I don't need Chubb. Okay. I've got Garrett. I don't need him. I need a running back and I need a quarterback. I need other things too, but those are the 2 things I'm going to build my franchise around: running back or quarterback. If I get my running back first, I can get my quarterback. If I take my quarterback first, I may not get that running back because one of those 4 quarterbacks is going to the Jets at 3. So I'm taking the running back first, make the Giants pull the trigger on the defensive end, let the Jets take the first quarterback at 3. And I still have, let's assume for the sake of argument, because this is pretty well known, the Jets take Josh Rosen, okay? Then you've got still Sam Darnold, who may be your number one guy anyway, that you were going to take in the first, as the first overall pick. You got Sam Darnold. You've got Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen still left on the board. So you still have your pick of quarterbacks. The difference between those three quarterbacks is not that great that you've got to take him at one. So, yeah, I'm taking Barkley first and rolling with it and just, not looking back. And I'll take my quarterback as the number 4 overall pick, and I'm good to go. Now, from that point on, now I start building my team. Now I'll start looking to replace Joe Thomas as the offensive tackle. I got 2 number 2s coming up. I start building my team from there, getting my cornerbacks, getting my linebackers, building my team up. I already made my receiver moves in the off season. So now it's a matter of putting together a good, solid offensive line, because what's the best thing to help a developing quarterback? And, you still have that kid from Buffalo as your starter right now. So you don't have to rush out. Tyrod Taylor is still your starter. You don't have to rush out and put your quarterback in on game one. But what's the best thing to help a struggling young quarterback is a powerful running game. And I'm in Cleveland. I'm playing in crappy weather come Thanksgiving. I'm going to pound that ball, and that's the kind of running back I want. He's fast on the outside, and he's big and strong on the inside. That's what I've got to build right now until I can get my quarterback's confidence up and I can throw the passes to the deep receiving core that I've built. And if I can build up my offensive line through the draft, like the Saints did, like the Cowboys did, look at how Dak Prescott did so much better with a good running game and a great offensive line 2 years ago versus now. That's just my mentality. All right, you're gonna laugh about him. That's a Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott. Sorry.
I try not. I'm laughing with you, not at you.
I've been talking about Dez Bryant too much today. Yeah, I've wasted way too much time.
I think a lot of people are talking entirely too much about Dez Bryant. Let me tell you guys something. I came from Oklahoma, and as a lot of you guys know, Dez Bryant played at Oklahoma State. I know people, and I've done a little research. Dez Bryant is no different now than Dez Bryant was when he was at Oklahoma State. And
so he's older. He's older and slower now.
Yeah. To refresh or maybe enlighten some of you, Dez Bryant lost. Allen, was it just his senior year, or was it his last 2 years eligibility for dealing with an agent?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I think it was.
I want to say it was just his senior year, but I don't know that.
I think you're right. Let me look it up real quick because let's see.
Okay, well, while you fact check that, I will. When asked at the end, after it had come to light and the verdict was handed down, it was reported that Dez said, "I'm bigger than all these chumps here," talking about Oklahoma State. "I'm bigger than college football. It's time for the NFL to show what they're going to do for Dez."
It was his 2009 season. October 7th, it was ruled ineligible the rest of that season for violating the NCAA bylaw. He failed to fully disclose his interaction with Deion Sanders to the NCAA, considered the best wide receiver in 2009, a possible Heisman Trophy contender before suspension. In 3 games, he finished with 323 receiving yards, 4 TDs, and a punt return touchdown. So, yeah, it was his final season.
And he has always been a very self-absorbed player, self-serving, arrogant, egotistical. Now, the arrogance and the egotism has somewhat subsided since he's become a professional player. Not a whole lot, but some. And one thing that I try to make people understand: character flaws don't just magically disappear because you hand these people a check for $1 million or $10 million or $50 million or $100 million. These character flaws, these things about them do not go away just because you throw money at it. Yeah. If anything, all it does is amplifies it. Once he got into the league, there was this situation where he assaulted his mother. I don't know the details of that, so I'm not going to speculate one way or the other on that. But suffice it to say, is he talented? Absolutely. If he was not a very talented player, he would not be in the position that he's in. But at the same time, know what you're buying, know what you're getting when you want to sign on the dotted line for Dez Bryant. You're going to have a player that is way more enamored and concerned with what's going on with Dez. Now, as long as we have Dez satisfied, okay, come on, team, jump on my back. But when it gets right down to it, you're playing in the NFC South. And one thing that people don't pay enough attention to is the fact that the NFC South for the past several years and for the foreseeable future is a dogfight. Hell, last year, 3 teams out of the 4 in this division made the playoffs. There's not going to be a team that runs away with it every year. It's just not going to happen. What's the word I'm looking for? The level of play from one team to the next is so narrow. The last 3 seasons, you saw the Panthers, you saw the Falcons, you saw the Saints, and I don't see that changing anytime in the foreseeable future. But all these people want you to let's get those run. Well, no, thank you.
Well, one of the things that I said to y'all in one of the chats we had was that the mistake they made with Dez Bryant was before he even really did anything. You made a big deal about giving him the number 88 jersey. That's the number that Drew Pearson wore. That's the number that Michael Irvin wore. So, they kind of made the 88 like the 18 for LSU. That is a big, important number for you to wear. Well, I mean, that feeds right into your ego. He didn't earn it. He just showed up and put it on. Now, you're not saying that, okay, the guy's not any good. Clearly he is. But, that is setting up a guy, your expectations for a guy. He is going to be your playmaker, okay? When we drafted Michael Thomas, I'm just doing this an opposite. When we drafted Michael Thomas in the 2nd round from Ohio State, aside from the fact I can remember people vividly going, why the hell we draft this guy? This guy is an Ohio State receiver. He's not... Yeah, he's good, but, he played in the Ohio State. I mean, come on. It's not like he played in the SEC.
They throw the football about once every 2 games.
Well, and that's the thing. Since they've gone with Urban Meyer, they've become much more like an SEC team. But, people just like, Michael Thomas, yeah, he might be pretty good, but he's not going to be that great. And then what did we find out? He gets there from day one. They're already talking about, hey, man, if I'm playing fantasy football, I'm getting number 13 and putting him on the team because this guy is something special. He earned the respect of the fans, in other words. He earned the respect of the team. He came out there hungry and dominated, okay? When you hand a guy the keys to the franchise from the get-go. A guy can do one or two things, and this is what happens with some of these players. They can do one or two things. They can either become the guy, a la Peyton Manning, a la Drew Brees, become the guy and just dominate. Or they could become an egotistical troublemaker, and I think that Dez Bryant, while he did play well, don't get me wrong. I mean, he set records for the Cowboys. He was not the Michael Irvin. He was not Drew Pearson because the Cowboys never won anything. Okay? They never won a playoff game. They never won a championship with Dez Bryant. And here's the problem you have with a guy like Dez Bryant coming to the Saints, okay? Michael Thomas knows this offense has a lot of weapons, okay? You can see that. What did you see with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara? You saw a camaraderie that, hey, yeah, I may not get the ball. You may get the ball this time, but it's not a competition between the two of us. It's about a goal that the two of us together are going to accomplish together to win, okay? When you have a guy like a Dez Bryant come to your team who is used to being the man, and you see him blow it up on the sidelines and fighting with teammates because he wants to be the man. Big-time players make big-time plays, and he's not making the big-time plays. Is he going to be the kind of guy who is now saying, well, you know what? I don't have to be the man anymore. I can come in and play maybe, 40% of the snaps in the game instead of playing every offensive snap of the game. I'm only going to come in on third downs. I'm going to be the just-in-case guy, okay? That was a hard thing for Brandon Cooks to swallow. Brandon Cooks didn't want to be the just-in-case guy. Brandon Cooks wanted to be the man, okay? Is Dez Bryant willing to be the just-in-case guy, or is he still going to want to be the man with the recognition? And this guy's the man, and so is he. 13 is the man. 41's the man. This guy's the man. I mean, that's the men on the team. 88's going to be a just-in-case guy. And that's a hard thing for somebody who's used to being the number one guy to swallow, and I just can't see him being that. Adrian Peterson had a hard time dealing with the being just-in-case guy. He got pissed off in that first game. And that's all. It takes a certain kind of player to realize that. So,
I think that the future of Dez is going to depend, and I don't know a delicate way to put this. Dude's going to have to change. He's going to have to change his attitude. He's going to have to change his work ethic. He's going to have to change his demeanor. He's going to, in my opinion, he's going to find out just exactly how much and how long Jerry Jones, how much Jerry Jones did for him, how much Jerry Jones stood up for him, because what Jones did to back Dez Bryant, I would venture to say 85 to 90% of the other owners in the league, I don't care what you're producing on the football field, they would not have gone to the extent that Jerry Jones did for Dez Bryant. Yeah. And nowadays, with things being as contemptuous as they are, it makes it even worse from an owner's standpoint to a disillusioned, self-absorbed player.
Well, I mean,
that's not to say that he cannot be successful. He's going to have to come in and accept and not only accept, but embrace the fact that he's going to have to be a piece to the bigger puzzle. And when he came to Dallas, there really wasn't that. He was automatically thrust, as you alluded to, with the number 88 jersey, and the fact that there really wasn't anything else going. He was thrust into the center of attention, center of the lineup, and he's been that for I'm not certain on how many years now, but for several years, everything in the Cowboys receiving core began with number 88, and those days are gone for him.
Well, and that was another point I was making, was the fact that he's an older player. He had a lot of drop passes. Supposedly he just didn't get along with Dak Prescott, but the point is he is not the receiver he was when he was 23 or 25 years old. So here you have a player who thinks he still is as good as he was. He wants revenge on the Cowboys, teach them a lesson for letting him go. Because I read a story about how he's considering, these guys, certain guys in the team, to be Garrett's boys. These are Garrett's kind of players. Well, hey, guess what? You have that kind of attitude, it's just not going to work. And if you're going to come out there with the idea, I'm going to play somebody who's going to play the Cowboys, and I'm going to have a monster game and teach them a lesson, and you don't get it, you're going to end up what you saw opening night in the Minnesota game, with the player yelling at the coach, especially if they're losing, I want to be out there to make a play. It's not about you. It's about winning the game. It's not about a revenge game. You don't get to do that. So, that's all the kind of stuff that has to be taken into consideration when you're talking about signing a guy like Dez Bryant, which I think is why the NFC East teams, like the Eagles, the Giants, and the Redskins, like, you know what? You're not worth it. You're not worth the baggage. You're not worth the headaches. I'm just not going to deal with you. Go to Baltimore. Baltimore can deal with you. Go to, Kansas City. Someone like that. Someone where, you can go and do your own thing. You're not coming in the NFC East. We're just not going to deal with this. And
having lived through it, I can see so many parallels between what was with Terrell Owens and what is with Dez Bryant. And Dez Bryant's trajectory is following right along in the same path as what Terrell Owens was. And T.O. made the Hall of Fame eventually, but he was never the player that he could have been, in my opinion.
I mean, he has the statistics. It's just he doesn't get that. He doesn't get the universal respect from a lot of players because of the idea that he was a cancer in the locker room, and that's really what it all boils down to. People just they look at Terrell Owens and they see the guy who did the thing in the Star. They see the guy fighting with Donovan McNabb. They see the guy you call Jeff Garcia, or didn't say he was gay, but implied that Garcia was gay, because if it looks like a rat, smells like a rat, it probably is a rat. And he that was his attitude about that was the quote he had about Garcia's sexuality and all that kind of stuff. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But anyway, enough about that. Listen,
how did a New Orleans Saints podcast just spend half an hour talking about Dez Bryant?
Well, because the talk right now is that the Saints are interested in signing Dez Bryant. But I think, at this point of the season, or the off season, this month, this is the smokescreen time. This is when they really start throwing a lot of things out there to kind of discredit or throw teams off that. Like, I think Peyton came out the other day and said that none of the quarterbacks are really, a first-round grade. There's no Carson Wentz out there. There's no who's the other quarterback he threw out there?
Goff.
Oh, yeah, Jared Goff. There's nobody like that out there. Implying basically that the Saints aren't interested in quarterbacks. Well, yeah, but you brought in Baker Mayfield for 3 workouts. You brought in Lamar Jackson. You've done your research on guys. There is an interest by the Saints in the quarterback. So, with that in mind,
there better be.
With that in mind, where do you see the Saints going at 27? We talked this question with Bob last week. Where do you see the Saints going with 27?
You know, Alan, to be totally honest with you, this year may be, in the past 5 or 6 years, this year may be the toughest to read of any of the previous 4 or 5 years, because going into the previous years, you've known, hey, we got to have an edge rusher, we've got to have a cornerback, we've got to have an offensive line. You know, we went from a 7-9 team to making a playoff push this year, so it's not so much about retooling things as just putting a finer edge on them. You know, I judging from Sean Payton, there's an absolute urgency at not only the edge rusher position, but also the tight end position. And to be honest, much differently than what some of you guys seem to think, I think the signing of Ben Watson, should he be able to stay healthy, I think that's going to stave off that that overwhelming urgency to bring in a tight end through the draft. So that narrows it down to either an edge rush, and I know there's people fixing to fall out and start throwing stuff at their devices, but I honestly believe that at this point it comes down to one of three different positions, and that will be edge rusher, tight end, and a close third is going to be the quarterback position. Because as you and I have discussed at length before, should a Mason Rudolph, a Baker Mayfield slide down that draft board to say just a shot in the dark to that 8 or 9 position, where they don't have to necessarily Ricky Williams mortgage the draft the way that Ditka did, but that they can make a reasonable trade that doesn't compromise the next couple of drafts that they have coming up. I honestly, it would not surprise me in the slightest to see them make a deal to get a Baker Mayfield or a Mason Rudolph or and you know, when it comes to the evaluation of quarterbacks, Garrett Grayson notwithstanding, I pretty much trust Sean Payton.
Well, you know, you had Sean Canfield and you had that guy Tyler Palco that they brought in, and neither of those guys worked out either. But you know, they were late round picks. They haven't taken a quarterback in the first round since Archie Manning in 1971. Yeah. Dave Wilson he took in the first round of the supplemental draft because Wilson had some eligibility problems at Illinois. But you know, other than that, they'd never take the highest they've ever taken a quarterback is in the third round when they took Garrett Grayson. You know, most of the Saints quarterbacks have arrived via trades or free agent signings. Bobby Abia was a free agent out of the USFL. Jim Everett was a trade. Aaron Brooks was a trade. Wade Wilson's a free agent. You know, the original quarterback of the Saints was Billy Kilmer was a draft choice from the expansion draft, you know, from the San Francisco 49ers. He was a running back / quarterback when they picked him. Yeah, he was still they were still running the single wing over at UCLA when Billy Kilmer was in college. So he got in a car accident, and I think it was in 1962, maybe 63. He got in a car accident and almost lost his leg, and it cost him that whole season. So that's why he stopped playing running back. But if you go back and look, and here's a fun thing to do. Go back to look at Jim Marshall's wrong way run. when he picks up the fumble and runs the wrong way at Old Kezar Stadium and scores a safety and thinks it's a touchdown. The way that play begins is a pass from George Myra to Billy Kilmer, who was the running back for the 49ers at the time. And Kilmer is the one that fumbles. So that's your little Saints history of the day. But yeah, Kilmer became a full-time quarterback, because he just couldn't run like he used to because of that car accident he was in. Anyway, going back, so if the Saints take a quarterback in the first round, it'd be the first time since 71 they've done this. I'm mentally preparing myself that they will do that to go get Baker Mayfield, just because that is such a Sean Payton kind of move. Everyone's expecting one thing. And
these things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was say all these predictions and all these needs the Saints have, the fans want that one last run to get the Super Bowl, and I could just see the Saints just totally blowing that up by going, oh, you know what? We decided we really wanted to get our quarterback for the future, and we do it, and then people just get pissed and just Twitter and Facebook explode with anger because, there goes your pass rusher, there goes your tight end, there goes your wide receiver, there goes everything because you're not picking – because everything after the third round is just trash. This is something Bob was talking about last week. But given that, if the Saints stay at 27 and don't go get a quarterback, I agree. I think I think it's going to be a pass rusher. I think it's Harold Landry, who's really more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, but he can play linebacker. He's more of a complete linebacker than some of the other, kind of tweener players. So they can use him at linebacker and also use him as a pass rusher. So I think Harold Landry's probably on top of the board. I still like the defensive tackle out of Florida. I really want to focus on a defensive line, though, because I think that's where the first round needs to be. I don't really like a lot of the tight ends in this draft in the first round. I think most of them are second-round picks. I think, there's going to be some guys who are going to go in the first round, like a Dallas Goedert and maybe the kid from Penn State. Go in that first round.
Gesicki.
Yeah, but they're really not. This is not a really strong tight end class. Okay, these are guys who need some work. That they have about a year of development before they're really ready. There's not a Greg Olson. There's not a Jason Witten or Rob Gronkowski. Somebody's going to come in right away and be your starter. They're about a year away from really they're going to need a year of apprenticeship behind a veteran starter. And yes, that's why you have a Ben Watson, but I just don't see them taking a tight end at 27. Picking at 27 is hard because so many things can happen in the top 20 picks. What positions does somebody make a run on? Okay. Do 4 quarterbacks go early? Do they take – is it the Browns and the Jets taking a quarterback, and then the Broncos move up and get a quarterback? So that's 3, and then the Bills and the Dolphins 4 and 5. 4-5. So that's 5 quarterbacks there. Then what happens after that? Does somebody else go out and get a quarterback and make it 6 players, or do they throw everything into out of chaos and just start taking defensive linemen, offensive linemen, receivers? That kind of motion where quarterbacks start sliding, then 27 gets to be a lot more complicated because now the pressure's on the Saints. Okay, if you want a Harold Landry, you're going to have to trade up into the 20s to go get him because there's a run on defensive ends or there's a run on defensive tackles. And if you want the kid from Florida, you probably have to go up and go get him early because the quarterbacks are all sliding. And maybe that's a good thing. But, you mentioned Mason Rudolph earlier. Here's another kid. I think he's more of a second round prospect. And unfortunately, it looks like the draft is about 15 to 20 guys deep of true first rounders. And then there's about 30 true second round picks. So at 27, that's really hard to really say, okay, am I going to take is a top 20 player going to slide to me at 27, or am I have to go up and go get them? And if all my players go in the top 20 picks, now I'm at 27, it's really more to my advantage to drop out of there and let somebody else go up and get that. And I now accumulate a second round pick where I get better value, I get more picks, and then I'm picking better because I'm getting much better value for that. I don't know. That has to be determined. And that's why on draft day, after you're doing all this research and all these players, something bizarre happens and somebody trades up or trades down and takes somebody early. It throws everything out of whack because now your whole evaluation process, okay, now, if this guy, like last year with the Chiefs trading up in with the Bills and taking Mahoney's ahead of us, that slid a surefire top 10 pick in Marshawn Lattimore to 11. Man, we ran up there and got that guy. That's really what the Saints are hoping for at 27. They're hoping there's a run on quarterbacks, and they hope there's a lot of people trying to move up to grab certain offensive players. That way, defensive players, top 15 defensive players are sliding down the draft board, and that's better for the Saints. Because I really think they really want that defensive player in the first round. They want that pass rusher. They want that run stuffer. And that's the positions I think they're targeting first. It's a long explanation. I'm sorry about that, guys.
Well, you made mention of our buddy Bob Rose, that is like our unofficial third member of the team here.
Mm-hmm.
We want to invite everyone to join Bob tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, to the inaugural broadcast of the Bayou Blitz, Bob's new show. We want to ask everybody that supports us to support him. We wish him the best. Once again, we want to invite everyone to join us 1 week from tonight for the second annual Donnie Lambert Memorial Pre-Draft-A-Palooza. Y'all can fill in all the blanks there. It's our annual pre-draft show. Every year we have only 2 expanded format shows. One is the last show before the season begins, and the other is the last show before the draft. And this would be that. We have a very special guest, as we announced earlier tonight. This year's special guest will be New Orleans Saints cornerback Arthur Millette from Bonneville High School, right there in Marrero, Louisiana.
Marrero, no. How about Kenner?
Kenner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marrero. Where was I?
Marrero's on the West Bank.
Well, okay.
It's a dark. It's like when Simba and Mufasa are sitting there looking at the whole kingdom, and Simba turns to his dad and says, "What about that shadowy place over there?" That's Marrero, son. That's the West Bank. You never want to go there. Sorry.
We just lost viewers in Marrero. Well,
I have good friends that live in the West Bank, so I can say that.
Anyway, Kenner, I apologize.
And it's Bonneville Bra. Bonneville Bra. Yeah, Bonneville Bra.
Okay.
I can say that. I can say that as a New Orleanian, and I went to De La Salle High School, so I have that whole uptown school snobbery going on here, and it's
so you were like a Soch and not a greaser then.
I was a prep. Well, first I was a cowboy, then I was a prep. So.
Oh my God, the visual.
That gives you an idea how old I am. Urban Cowboy was popular when I was in high school, so according to myth, it was popular.
Anyway, we just went down a dangerous and dark road. I expected to see Ichabod Crane coming.
Hey, man,
Anyway.
you're the one that said Bayou Blitz, and now I have Sweet playing in my head the whole time. Ballroom Blitz is playing in my head. So, you know.
Well, hey, at least you acknowledged that, and you didn't say Tia Carrera playing Ballroom
No.
Blitz.
No. We're not going there. No. We stick with the original, you know. We stick with things like Mountain Mississippi Queen, which, how long did that song take to write? That's about 7 lines in that song. That's about it. You know, everybody knows one line. Mississippi Queen. You know what I mean. That's good. That's it. You know, that's all you need to know. Anyway.
Leslie West was an incredible guitar player. And I would imagine that maybe the brown acid had something to do with it. And for people that don't understand that, go back and watch Woodstock. It'll play on PBS once a year, I'm sure. But we want to invite everyone to support our man Bob next week as he embarks on this crazy journey that we have. Oh wow, man! You know, I just realized a couple more months we got our 2nd anniversary coming up.
Mm-hmm.
July 20th. Well, make 2 years. Wow.
Hey. Well, you know, as a reminder to everybody, when it's the draft and it's this week of the draft, and you know, you can hear a lot of stuff out there about they're not interested in this guy, or they're really thinking about getting this guy and things like that. You know, keep in mind it's all a smokescreen. So, you know, you have to have, you know, a little Deep Purple in mind as you listen to this. Little smoke on the water, because this is all just smoke and mirrors right now. What happens on draft day, you know, boy, these speakers suck. I need to get my good speakers back. We need my good speakers back. That's terrible. That is terrible. I got my good speakers in the front. I need to put them back on there. But anyway, as I was saying before, you know, it is a smoke screen. Don't believe what you're hearing right now. They can be bringing a lot of players in just to, not because they're that interested in them, but just to throw off other teams and make them think they're going somewhere else. So, you know, it's a time of smoke, you know. Anyway, thank you guys for sticking with us for this long. We appreciate it. We'll try and start on time from now on. You got a little taste of our discussions beforehand with the first round's draft. I'd also think the Saints do make a move, regardless of who they draft in the first round. They do make a move to try and reacquire a 2nd-round pick. What that cost them, I don't know. But I cannot see them letting the entire 2nd-round slide without making a move to get a 2nd-round pick back. Of course, we don't have our 2nd-round pick because we took it. We traded that to get Alvin Kamara in the 3rd. But you know, with a pick in the 1st and the 3rd round only in the first 2 days of the draft, we have some extra ammunition with some lower round picks. 2 5s and 2 7s, I believe. No, 2 6s. 2 6s and 2 7s. We got a 6 for Adrian Peterson. I think we had an extra 7 for another trade. I forgot who the hell we traded, but yeah. So,
damn it, I can't remember.
No, I just drew a blank on it, and it'll come to me. It'll come to me. But anyway, you know, with that number of picks, late picks, like we said earlier, and as we started the show, it doesn't mean that day 3 is a waste. There's a lot of good quality players that Saints can pick up on day 3. The 5th round's been very good for them. You look at a guy like Thomas Morstead. They got him in the 5th round. Good player. Of course, Marcus Colson in the 7th round. Zach Streif, who just retired this year, 7th-round pick. Going back in time a little bit, you know, you've seen some other good players like Eric Martin was a 7th-round pick. Shoot, I just forgot the name of the player I was getting ready to say a second ago, right before I said Eric Martin. Morton Anderson was a 4th-round pick. The kicker, Morton Anderson, 4th-round pick. So there are players that are available. I got a little picture of Fred McAfee, Fast Freddie, 6th-round pick. That's who I was going to say. Fast Freddie, Fred McAfee, 6th-round pick, good player. What are you laughing about?
The NFL Network, this day in draft history, Mike Ditka trades 8 draft picks for Ricky Williams and then gets fired for going 3-13.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me tell you, and this is going to be the last thing we're going to talk about because we got to wrap it up. But this is the Mike Ditka thing. Believe it or not, fans were looking forward to that draft. I mean, the fact that we traded up to get Ricky Williams, fans were excited. That was a huge moment for the franchise. Now, of course, in the long run, it seemed to hurt us because that was a lot of players that we could have used, in the 1999 season that we clearly were not one player away from having a playoff team. But if you look at the players that the Redskins and the Bears took with those draft picks they got from the Saints, because we traded our picks to the Redskins turned around and traded some more picks to the Bears, some of those picks to the Bears. The Redskins only got Champ Bailey out of the draft, and I think the Bears got even less than that.
I don't think that the Bears got anything really substantial out of any of those picks.
Yeah, and the Saints went to the playoffs in 2000, whereas the Bears and the Redskins never made the playoffs until well after the Ricky Williams trade. And then Randy Mueller parlayed Ricky Williams to the Dolphins for 2 first-round draft picks. One, we used to get Charles Grant, and the other one, of course, we botched by trading up to go get Jonathan Sullivan. But the point is, you got value. You got a 2-year, 1,000-yard rusher, 2 years in 2000, 2001, Ricky Williams. And you got 2 first-round picks for him. So you got value for that pick. So while the Ricky Williams trade was a stupid trade, you never trade your entire draft for a player. The 1999 draft was not a very deep class, not a very good class. So you really didn't lose much, because if you don't make Ricky Williams, this was the rumor that I heard at the time. If the Saints weren't able to make the deal for Ricky Williams, they were going to take Cade McCown, who was the quarterback who went to the Bears. He was a UCLA quarterback. They were going to take him in the first round as the quarterback of the future for the Saints. Cade McCown lasted, 3 seasons, I think, in the NFL? If that long. He was not a productive quarterback at all. That was a horrible draft class, for quarterbacks. I think Achilles Smith was in that draft class as well. He was terrible. In fact, he was the one that scored an 8 on the Wonderlic, if I remember right. In fact, there's a video of Warren Sapp making fun of the fact he scored an 8, because I think Sapp is something like you get a 7 if you spell your name correctly. So, I mean, that was
Warren Sapp smoked a doobie before his drug test. So
yeah, I remember that. That was 1995. I remember that vividly. The Jet fans were chanting, "We want Sapp! We want Sapp!" And I think they took a tight end that year. I think they took Kyle Brady that year. I have to go back and look. It was 95. And oh man, the Jets fans. That's that. If you want entertainment, Google Jets draft day mistakes. That video clip, or just a montage. That is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. But
we've burned bridges to Marrero, and now we can't play in New York.
Oh well, that's all right. Any Jet fan will go, no, he's dead on right. I mean, we blow everything, So, they're like a hooker on sailor night. They blow everything. Yes. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We appreciate you
Please
sticking
come
with
back
us.
next week.
Yes, come back next week and we will have a lot more fun. There'll be a lot more people talking. You don't have to just listen to me babble on for an hour. I will play the official so-and-so is on the clock now, and that's about it. I'll let them kind of support their pick. And if my son picks the wrong player, I'll call him a rat bastard again, So I'm sorry. I will clean that up. He is the illegitimate child of a rodent. So we'll just leave it at that. So anyway.
I want to get that recorded where I can make that into a ringtone on my phone.
Rat bastard?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite phrases.
Let me show you one of what my co-host sounds like. Rat bastard. Okay.
Anyway, please do join us next week. It's again, we start at 7:00. It's a special 2-hour production. 7:00 Central Mountain, 8:00 for those of you on the East Coast, and that's the dinner time for those of you on the West Coast. So 6:00. We'll see you next time, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, under the dome. Thank you guys for watching, and good night, everybody.